Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. And today we have with us Sivonnia DeBarros, who is the founder and principal attorney of DeBarros Law Firm. Welcome to the program, Sivonnia.
Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. And I know that today we want to talk about your exciting new book coming out, which is What Are You Sporting About? So I want to learn all about that because it's really a unique approach and unique topic. So give us a little bit of background on yourself, your law firm, and then what led you to work on this project.
Absolutely. So I am a Florida girl, born and raised, and moved up here to the Midwest to be immersed in the Chicago culture. One thing that led me to law is that I always wanted to help people. I always had a passion for doing that and bringing about justice. And so that drove me to law school. Since the age of about 4 or 5, my mom said I've always said that I wanted to be a lawyer. And so that has been a central purpose that has driven me in my quest to do the right thing and help people to do the most good. But my passion inside of my purpose got lost. And so I had been operating my firm for about 5 years when I really just got down and dirty with myself and said, hey, what are you doing here? And I started thinking about who it was that I really wanted to service. I built a business around serving business clients, constantly in court over contract issues, employment issues. And there was just something it was lost. My passion was not being ignited the way that I wanted it to be. And so when I started thinking about who it was I wanted to serve, I thought about who I was as an individual. And I did run track in college, Division I. And so as an athlete, I started thinking about that. I said, okay, there are a lot of pro athletes who start their own business or they invest in someone's business. And after talking with people and representing them, I realized that there is a huge need to fully educate, represent, and guide professional athletes who are in business. And so that's my niche, and that's how I got to this point. And that's also been the motivation behind writing the book, What Are You Sporting About?
You know, through that description, it makes me think of something that I'm confident that is going to come out, which is this. If the athlete legal approach that you're taking and the book, What Are You Sporting About, is just another box to tick off in your daily tasks, it's going to fall flat. But because you came through this, what is my passion, my purpose, and you discovered this now becomes something that just springs to life. And so the people and the athletes and the readers of this book now will feel that way more so than just, let's file this paperwork, click. Let's do this thing, click. So I love when you hear about the enthusiasm and the passion that people take in a new topic. Nothing new in the law. It's just that you're applying it now. So did you have a client who was an athlete that you worked with, and then all of a sudden you were thinking, well, this is a need for them. I'll bet there's a need for other athletes as well.
Yes, actually, I started off with one athlete. And let me just back up really, really quick, because I started off just doing my own personal market research. When I found out, I said, okay, these are the people I want to represent, that I want to really guide, who I feel like have been lost in the cracks, just falling between the cracks. And so I started off with them. And this book idea was not there before I met this athlete. I just had this general concept of what I wanted to do. And as I worked with them, this entire process, collaboration, protection, educating them, being able to guide them, giving a team work framework, all of that just started coming together. And I said, oh my gosh, I have to do something that will give these pros a different perspective on their daily life, their business life, and, being an athlete. One of the reasons why I titled this book, What Are You Sporting About? And I was a little concerned it would confuse people at first, but sometimes people ask you, man, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, what are you sporting about is why are you even doing what you're doing?
Yes.
And a lot of these young kids, they have the drive to want to be a professional athlete so much. But when we pull that cover off, what else is there? And so that central question, what are you sporting about? It's not just about the sport that you're going in, but what is your purpose behind all of this? What are you using your sport for post-sports? How is it fueling you to create the things that you want to create? Have you set boundaries in place to protect yourself? So this question is so broad because it asks so many different questions about that particular professional athlete.
And I would venture to say too that you mentioned, after sports, and there's like a before, during, and after. You probably can speak to and apply these principles before, during, and after. But I would venture to say that if you helped an athlete discover their passion, enthusiasm, and what they're sporting about during their career, that's going to just really amplify what they're doing and reignite things that it's going to make them a better athlete while they're in it. And then it starts giving them that little peek over the horizon to go, look, an injury or my career will be over at some point. We know that, but what happens then? So I think that it's not just one compartmentalized, we help athletes when they retire and do this, or it's before, during, and after. And I think that's really exciting.
It is very exciting. And let me just touch on something you said, because my subtitle to the book is for prospective, current, and former professional athletes.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I just knew before, during, and after is kind of like a marketing thing. But how perfect is that? Yes.
Yeah, because I think college students, even if you're in high school and you want to go to college and be a student athlete, you are in that bucket, especially if you just shine in college. You're in that group of people, that very small percentage where you actually may go pro. And now is the time, if we can catch children and young adults early enough, a lot of these problems that I've seen with professional athletes in business, we can try and rein that in. And so if that student athlete reads this book and think about the principles that I put in there, like, for one, having a business mindset. I don't know if you know, but I think the NCAA is in a huge battle now in terms of whether they're going to allow student athletes to control their brand, which I feel like they should, because some of these schools, especially Division I, these top athletes, their pictures, their names are selling tickets, and these schools are making millions of dollars bringing folks to their schools or wherever for these games. And so that is a perfect point for these young professional athletes. I'm calling them professional because you're playing in a very elite level. But that is a moment for you to really think about, what is my end goal? But then also thinking about you and your brand, because as you start to fall into this particular community, you are in business. Yeah. I understand that, you're going to school and you're doing work and you're going to your workouts or what have you. But when I was a student athlete, I had to conduct myself as if I was in a business. I had to, maintain my calendar properly, make sure I went to my classes so that my eligibility was intact, show up to my practices. And I still had little side jobs and things that I was doing, but it was important that I carried myself in a way where it did not sully my particular brand as a person, as an individual, as an athlete. And when you are in that very small percentage, where you may possibly go pro, I mean, look at some of these guys who they're on the cusp of possibly being drafted, but some of these teams are looking at them and some of their past conduct, and they're like, I don't know if I can take a chance on you.
Yep.
I mean, you are in a business, and it's important that you start to create that business mindset around the sport, around your brand, so that things don't get lost.
You bring I think we can, I'm having a feeling that we can talk for about 4.5 days straight on this, which is why you wrote the book. So I'm excited to read it myself too. But you mentioned business and blending business with, sports and your athletic career. And, have you ever read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, where he talks about begin with the end in mind? And that's a pretty broad principle. And we've heard it many times, but you're teaching these athletes at any level, high school, college, begin with the end in mind. I mean, literally, it should be, okay, sit down, and I want you to think about when you're 40. And I know when a kid is 18, it's like 40. Wow, you must be in the grave at that point. But think about then, what do you want your life to look like? Do you want to be, do you want to be Hall of Fame? Do you want to? And if you can begin there, and then back up and back up and back up, and can give them that passion to pull them through and not feel pushed, because there's going to be workouts that you might have to take the 2-a-days in the middle of summer, and it's like, oh, I don't have, but if you're pulled by that vision and that passion, you are going to make it through. So begin with the end in mind is a big piece. And then another thing, you've mentioned this word several times, and I love that you're using it for the athletes in the sports world, which is your brand. And I remember going through a seminar years ago called The Brand of You, and it was for financial professionals. And basically it was, hey, you might work for whatever financial company doing stocks, bonds, and trading, but really focus on the brand of you, because you may not work for that company for the rest of your career. You want your clients to follow you, your brand. What do you stand for? Well, how many times does a pro athlete get traded in the career? A dozen. So what's the brand of you? And if you can plan out with the end in mind, your brand and the business side of that right now, that's a big, big plus. And you are going to fill in any cracks that things can fall through. So I love that you're taking that approach. So speak a little bit more about the brand, and let's relate it to what you were touching on with that NCAA concept,
Okay. So let me just be honest. So even as an adult business professional, licensed lawyer, all those things, branding has become full circle for me. And I think it's one of those concepts where almost kind of like law, it's out there, but it's not really tangible. You don't feel like you can touch it, so sometimes people feel like it's just out lost in the wind, so to speak. But as I educated myself a lot more about brand, it's not just about creating a particular product or creating a business. Your brand is also you, how people perceive you, and how you also want to be perceived by other people. And let's just go from the, point of this aspiring professional athlete to someone who's currently playing. Well, you are a walking billboard. And if you engage in bad conduct as a student athlete, or you can never get along with your teammates as a current professional athlete, that's your brand. That's
a stigma.
It's a complete stigma, and people are not going to want to work with you. You have to, I always tell people, be the best you can be all the time and do the right thing when no one's looking.
Yep.
Because it's a telltale regarding who you are as a person.
Well, in business, if you return a phone call the same day or respond to an email the same day or quickly, you look like a rock star, because everybody else out there just lets things fall through the cracks. So it doesn't take much these days to look really, really like you're on it. And I'm sure that in the sports world, any sport, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, track, it doesn't matter. I am sure that there are things that the top athletes do. And if you compared it to the average athlete, it's like, it's not 10x difference between elite and average. It's just these little things and these little things. And, you probably heard the example about the racehorse that wins by a nose, and the winner gets $1 trillion and the second place gets like, here's your $10. It wasn't a big difference, but just by the nose. So it's those little things that compound and build up.
Right. And just knowing how to market yourself, that's also a brand. So not all student athletes are going to possibly be drafted into a certain sport, but maybe you are that person who's going to sign the collective bargaining agreement, which we call CBAs, post drafts. So how are you going to market yourself to these teams to get paid what you feel like you deserve to be paid? You have to show that you've established a trustworthy brand, and that starts with you, who you are, how people perceive you, how you want to be perceived, how well you work with other people, what are your stats, what have you done to show them that you're going to be an asset. And that's really the basics of branding in any industry. And I'm learning that. There are things that keep coming up that I'm learning, but I have strategically aligned myself with people who are experts in that field, which is also another key component to what are you sporting about. If there's something you don't know, then you need to align yourself with other people who do know so that you can carry your success forward.
And you would be doing a disservice to a client if you try to be all things to them and go, oh yeah, I got this. And then you're just kind of like being the jack of all trades, but a master of none. So
right.
When you align yourself with other strategic alliances or people on your team and go, hey, look, we've got to do this next piece of our project, this legal aspect, and I'm going to bring in my colleague, who is
right.
who's really good with this piece of it. And you're kind of like, using the sports analogy, you're the coach overseeing everything, but that coach
exactly.
has a lot of different assistant coaches and specialists, and that's what you need to do. And I think that when these athletes are being approached by people to go, hey, I can help you do this, this, and this, boy, there's got to be a lot of red flags that go up. So speak a little bit about what some athletes at any level, even the college level, if you start getting sucked into some things where that starts a pattern, what are some things that they need to watch out for with their brand and also from the legal aspect?
Well, you know what? I'm going to lead with the law because that's my that's my brand. But there's something, and I don't know if this terminology already exists, but I put it in my book, The Pro Victim. At the collegiate level and beyond, you have to understand and know the power of your legal rights because you don't want to become a pro victim, quote unquote. And so what is that? A pro victim is it's a professional athlete who's become a victim of some illegal wrong. And some of the examples I use, deal with theft. And so one of the conversations that you and I had before, Mike, was about how these professional athletes are being taken advantage of. And more often than not is by financial advisors. Yeah. Now, here's a huge problem because you do need a financial advisor, period. But you have to be smart and strategic about how you find someone to be a financial advisor. And so if you start off by educating yourself and knowing what people should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing and how you can assert your legal rights, that will provide you with the layer of protection so that at the end of the day, if someone wrongs me, I can at least get back what was due to me or be compensated for that injury. There's way too many professional athletes who have lost a lot of money and, monetary thing, that's something else, but you just don't know how people emotionally react to things when someone has stolen from them. So there could be other claims out there. So there are 3 basic claims that I do introduce in the book, and I don't want to tell you guys because I want you to read it. But, from a basic standpoint, it's okay to have a lawyer in your pocket. And you should have a lawyer in your pocket. So you need to start there. Always have a lawyer in your pocket because you need to be able to protect your brand. You need to protect all these hard-earned dollars that you made. I mean, you have not gotten to this point by being a lackadaisical person. You worked your butt off. So start there. Start learning how to implement a team and collaborative relationship with individuals so that everything that you're trying to achieve, you have the right people to help you get there and to sustain it once you actually achieve it. I do want to talk about the business mindset a little bit more because this is something that, really needs to start at the collegiate level. I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of basketball players now are choosing to go to the NBA G League versus playing in college because they want to have control of their brands and they feel like they should be paid for it.
Yeah.
And so if, regardless of whether you decide to go to a sub-pro league or you stay at the collegiate level, and let's just say hypothetically nationwide, NCAA has allowed all these athletes to control their brands. Well, now who's going to manage that money for you?
Yeah.
How are you going to invest it? What are you going to do with it? There are way too many people who feel like they have to, I don't know, I guess pay homage to the best friend who's always been down since day one, you know, or I got to buy my mom and dad a house and, you know, all this stuff. Well, there's an issue, you know, a concept that we've all heard before, which is self-preservation. And all of us want to make money. You know, I get that and I understand that. And then some people, I know that it's exciting to be able to buy something or to, you know, just give someone something that you feel indebted to. But if you do not put measures in place to save, to properly invest, to properly educate yourself on finance, you cannot save somebody if you have not already saved yourself.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing to self-preservation. You know, so if you're trying to do good in the community, if you want to do good for your parents, if you want to, you know, be able to provide a gift to your friend or whomever, you have to be able to have those hard conversations. And that's one of the first steps by owning your own brand and being a businessman or businesswoman is you have to have those tough conversations. Look, let's talk about money. Let's talk about self-preservation. Let's talk about generational wealth, because if you want me to be able to take care of you 10 years later, that means I can't take care of you right now.
Or at the level that you wish I would.
Exactly. Or at the level that you wish that I take care of you. This is what we need to do. Let's follow ABC first, you know, so I can take care of you later. But if you want it now, that's not going to happen. And we're all going to be looking at each other crazy.
Right. Because, you know, I'm sure there's statistics in the sports world the same as this one that's coming to my mind, which is a large percentage of lottery winners that get multiple millions. They lose it and go into debt within a certain period of time because they are not taught, or they just get, you know, euphoric with all of this money. Same with athletes, I'm certain of. And you want to help out your mom and your family and your friends and all of this, but there are limits because there's a limit to your career. There's a limit to money. So having the right people on their team financially, legally, and all of that helps guide them. And, you know, there could be legal aspects to the way that you handle your money that you might not be aware of because you don't know what you don't know. And until you know it, you've got to have the people on your team that are going to protect your interests legally so that you can go out there and do your sports that you do and have that clear mind.
Yep. And you know what? And that makes me think about secure transactions. And a lot of people don't know what this is, but, you know, on the most basic level, if you write a track, you're engaged in secure transactions. But a lot of athletes go into investing into stocks and they don't have a securities lawyer on their team. Like you should have a securities lawyer on your team because what if you have to report, you know, those stocks? What if you have to provide certificates of stocks, you know, to individuals? If you're not doing that, I mean, that's technically a federal violation.
Wow.
So
it's not just let's sign up for an online e-trade and click. There's more to it than that.
It is way more to it than that. And that's why, you know, we talked about having the end goal in mind. And sometimes the end goal may change. Your overall purpose may not change, but your end goal in terms of what you want may change. And when it does, you need to make sure you're finding the right people on your team to advise you. And I understand, and I know, because I'm telling you, when I first said to myself, I want to represent professional athletes, I felt like the doors were just not just being shut on me, honey. So they were slamming the doors, you know.
And you felt the wind in your hair from the slam.
Yes. But I just kept at it because I know that this is a conversation we need to have. And sometimes people just don't want to have those vulnerability type conversations, you know, because they don't want to face it. But we got to talk about it. But you as a professional athlete, if there are any of you listening to this, I understand the need to protect yourself. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do is make sure if you come to me and you want to be represented, that we create the right collaborative relationship so that you can be protected. But you also have to move yourself with some form of humility and understanding and openness, because if you don't and the right person approach you, you will not have the proper discernment to know, okay, I may want to do business with them. So if you know what I'm saying? Like if you're so arrogant and shut off and abrasive, not only are you not going to be an approachable person, but you may be missing out on a perfect relationship to help move you forward in your career goals.
And I wonder if this is a thing. So you're talking about having the right people on your team and trusting people and protecting you, right, as an athlete. Well, I would bet that there are some people, some athletes that have their little inner circle and they're listening to their boy from back in the day that's just talking in their ear like, oh, well, you're good on that. And you need to have, and they're not filtering that through, hold up, let me get some outside perspective because my buddy's telling me I don't need to have that legal securities representation, but it's a thing. So how do you get those, blinders down for people's eyes to go, look, that's great to have your friends and your family and your confidants from, on the personal side of things, but you need to have a legal team, a financial team, a whatever else team. How do you get past that to have people listening to reason in reality?
Let me tell you, Mike, first off, it's going to start with the individual.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to want something better for yourself. And we may not know everything that someone is dealing with in their own personal lives, behind the scenes. But when you hear it, it's going to strike a nerve. And so that's one of the things that this book does is definitely remove those blinders and deep dive into challenging issues. One of the things I talk about, we mentioned the pro-victim. I ask in that book, why are you a pro-victim? What is it that you've been through already that you never learned from? You never learned that lesson, so you've never created the proper discernment to protect yourself from something later in life, which could be, for example, the friend who is taking you for everything you're worth, but you feel like you owe them something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's very hard to try and break through that surface with some of these professional athletes. But I think, especially with the younger generation who's coming up, they realize and they recognize that it's so many professional athletes out there who were amazing in their own right, who absolutely have nothing. And they don't want to be like that. And so they're already kind of primed to want to hear what needs to be said to them and want to set some type of plan so that they don't leave their sport broke. But then you do get the other ones who, once that money touches their hands and that lifestyle changes, is difficult. But they have to be willing to come with an open mind. And I like to say, kind of the way I was as a first year law student, like I've always wanted to be a lawyer. But I knew to be a great one, to graduate, to take and pass that bar, I was going to have to leave everything I thought I knew at the door and walk into that classroom every day and be a sponge and just soak it up.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to have to do. Allow, for one, have the proper mindset to evaluate the right people who can be on your team. But once they get there and you create those good relationships, just be a sponge, soak it up. You don't have to be a know-it-all.
Yep. Just be open-minded, but cautionary open-minded because you don't want to be gullible either.
Right. You don't want to be gullible and fall into the same situation that you're trying to get away from.
Yep.
Which is a very delicate balance. It really, really is. And I kind of go into that too. It's such a delicate balance, and I understand the need to have this shield up because there's so many people who come at these athletes so fast and so hard and, selling them pipe dreams and everything. And I get it. I totally understand it because I'm that way in certain particular industries coming to me. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
but you have to have some form of open-mindedness to say, okay, at least let me hear this person, but then you go and you do your own due diligence.
Well,
you
need to have your plan in place up front before you get into that whirlwind, because you're going to make a snap decision and it might not be a good decision. So let's just use the example you've been saying with, a college athlete that has really high pro aspirations. Then they need to have their plan in place now so that when draft day comes or when they get into the league, then now they know, okay, good. Sivonnia told me to be prepared for this, and here it is. So I now need to do these things and these decisions and these responses to these things that are coming my way, because she told me they were going to come, and here it is.
Exactly. And that's actually something I'm working on with a few professional athletes who are former professional athletes, in creating and crafting plans for collegiate athletes, because of course their needs are different. They're not pro yet, but it does help them to start to craft a strategic plan, because you're just going to have to, it's going to be a learning curve, number one, but you're going to have to get yourself in a position where you understand that you're in business. Once you walk into the field or that court or whatever, you're in business. And so now how do we craft a plan to make sure that not only are you setting yourself up for success, but you have a flow in how you respond to requests, or maybe you're asking for certain requests. What is the flow for reviewing contracts? All of that stuff.
Yeah, having something in place ahead of time, number one, is essential, obviously, but number two, I would venture to say that it kind of gives a little bit of a sense of peace on the front end to go, okay, I know what's coming. I know what I need to be doing. I know what responses I need to make when this comes up and that comes up. And it kind of gives you that track to run on, or that blueprint. And then, what I would even say is that, like intrinsically gives them even more kind of pull, because they know and they're looking at what's going to happen and could happen. And it kind of makes it even more real for them.
Right. I agree. I absolutely agree.
I think that's awesome. So let's just wrap up with this. What's the best way that people can reach out, connect with you, learn more about the legal side of their athletic career, as well as pick up a copy of your book?
They can definitely email me at sdebarros@sldebarros.com. You can follow me on all the social media channels at sldebarroslaw or sldebarros_law for Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, make sure you guys go out there and, you know what? I'm starting a new podcast. What are you sporting about podcast? So be looking for that. If you follow me on social media, you will get the notifications when that goes live. So that way you all will also have notifications for when the book is dropping.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, Sivonnia, thank you so much for coming on and bringing these really relevant, important topics to our attention.
Thank you so much, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.